All right, welcome everyone. Welcome. Meaghan, it's great to have you here with us today.
Thank you so much. Thrilled to be here. And yeah, excited to see people popping on the call here.
Yeah, we're excited. We should have a really good session today. After our big conference, which many of you were at, we're really getting back into our webinar, series and everything. Of course, with VEERUM here being one of our greats to start it off. And I think it's perfect. I think this will be a perfect session to really come back into some of our webinars because we've focused a lot, leading up and then into the conference on a lot of technologies. And this is obviously software heavy technology, but we'll really be talking about this, well, from a data management side, but it's got a very holistic approach and usability approach, Meaghan, which I think is a perfect way to jump back into this industry.
I hope so. Yeah, I'm excited about it. And, as always, I left the RCN conference so inspired, so full of fantastic conversations and collaboration. And, it's easy to take that and just say, okay, where are we going next with it? So, yeah, we really appreciate that platform and certainly being able to be here and share some ideas with the group here. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yep. So today will be great for everyone here who's jumping in. Welcome. We're going to give just a minute or another 2 minutes or so, as everyone jumps into the session. But again, we've got a very exciting discussion today on, data storage, a lot of data sharing, what VEERUM is doing, and how they're bringing value to everyone included on that workflow, and a lot of ownership here, which is an area of this industry that I love, because ultimately that's what we all really care about, in so many ways, is what the owners are doing to make reality capture technology profitable for their business. That's what everyone in the reality capture space ultimately needs. We need to make it useful. The technology is fantastic. It has to be profitable to the owners at the end of the day, because they're the ones who call all the shots, really, upper ownership who holds all of these assets. If they believe in this technology to some extent and they can really adopt it and they're willing to put funds behind it, that makes a huge difference that makes all the difference for everybody in this industry, for them to buy in and actually buy in with their dollars,
100%. Yeah. Yeah. And
Yeah.
hopefully we'll to share some ideas today as well on, what we're seeing in the industry. What are some of the challenges, when organizations are starting to adopt this technology? What are some of the workarounds? What do you need to focus on to have success here? So I think, we all believe in reality data, and we just need to have some thought leadership, knowledge sharing about what's the best way to roll these things out.
Yep, absolutely. So I think everyone's trickling in right now. We'll probably get a few more people. For everyone who's joining, welcome. But let's kick things off. Let's get everything started. So many of you likely know me. My name is James Mosimann, and I'm with Reality Capture Network here. And I have the honor of our wonderful guest, Meaghan Snethlage, with us today from VEERUM.
Perfect. Thank you so much, James. Yeah, I'm thrilled to be here with you. I'm Meaghan. I'm Director of Client Development with VEERUM. I've been with the organization for about 3.5 years, and definitely have had the pleasure of working with a lot of our clients, newly onboarding, just testing out tools, and all the way up to some of our larger clients who are scaling these, tools out across their asset portfolios. So loved working with the RCN team, really opening us up to some of that community out there, which we really believe in. So excited to share some content with you guys today and hopefully get some good engagement as we go through.
Yeah, perfect. So for anyone here who's listening, feel free to ask questions throughout. This is going to be just a very organic conversation. Meaghan has some fantastic things to show us here today on their business and their programs, what they offer. Please feel free. There's a question Q&A box. Feel free to chime those in. We will answer those as we go through everything here. And we will also have dedicated time at the end of this webinar to go into a deeper dive of some of the questions. So without further ado, Meaghan, I'll let you kick things off here.
All right, let's do it. Okay, so I want to just frame out this conversation with, why is there so much conversation around reality data, around working visually? Why is this such a key concept that we really need to be integrating into our work practices? And, it's interesting to think about the human brain. And I, come from a neuroscience background. So this hits pretty near and dear to my heart in terms of the why here. Many of us know or may not know that 90% of the information that we're processing as humans is visual. Now, that really stands out when you think about the systems that we're traditionally working off of are highly textual. They're separate. We're trying to piece things together, but it's really textual data when we're not really designed to process information that way. So if 90% of the data that we're, ingesting, that stimulus is visual, we can actually process that information 60,000 times faster than anything that we read. We also retain that information significantly better than we do than when we read it. So, we really have to frame out the question, like, if this is the way we are designed to live, operate, and think in the real world, why aren't we, customizing or designing our work processes to fit that mold? So I hope this makes you guys laugh. I'm sure many of us have seen this quote and this gentleman before, but really is an important thing to think about when we're talking about shifting the paradigm about the way that we're working. So obviously the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. So how does that relate here? Well, typically, a huge problem that we encounter when we're working with our clients or out in the industry is that I think you guys can all agree, I would bet my life on the fact that, 95% or more owners and operators out there are consistently looking for ways to, drive efficiencies, increase productivity, make their work processes safer. But they're looking at ways to, have impact or find solutions to these problems within the existing confines of their work paradigm. So, their same work procedures, like what can we tweak here to add massive returns? Well, you're really working in a vacuum and you're not going to be able to find, significant impact if you're not looking outside of the box. And that's why, I think we all agree it is so critical to look to technology and innovation that exists today in the industry, leverage reality data, leverage geospatial tools, and actually change the way we're working, change to a more visual way of working. And that's where you're going to see those significant impacts. So these numbers at the bottom, these are reported from the industry, from clients, they're reportable. Leveraging geospatial technology and innovation will boost your productivity over and above 33%. It's going to reduce your site exposure by 50% and significantly cut your operating costs. So I just want to talk about, the overarching why, what are we talking about here and why is this so critical? So looking at digital transformation, huge buzzword, lots of conversation around this, but what are some of the key pillars that we're looking at, in practice when we're thinking about how this is actually happening within our organizations and of course, across the industry? Well, the number one thing here is data capture. And a couple of things to talk about here. Data capture is, becoming such a commodity these days. We have fantastic ecosystem partners out there who are just absolute experts in this space. The technology, the hardware, the methodologies, the self-capture tools, they're all advancing incredibly fast. And it's really making, capturing data that much more accessible for everybody, which is fantastic. This is a huge enabler for obviously digital transformation and, the reality capture industry. When you think about it, though, we now have a tsunami of information that's coming at our organizations, at our team, at our workforce. I think over 90% of the total data that exists in the world today was just captured within the last 2 years alone. So it's pretty impactful when you think about the rate of return and how fast this data is getting captured. So that leads me kind of to the next piece of the puzzle here, which is storage. So if you have all of this data that's being captured and processed across your organizations out in the world, you need to find a way to store it, to govern it, to democratize it, and to share it out to the hands of your users. And this is something I'll get into a little bit more in just a few minutes here. But, this is a huge inhibitor that we've seen, is not having a place to actually store and share out this data. There hasn't been good solutions, on the market until just pretty recently within the last, 12 to 24 months, where we've seen solutions out there that can really manage your geospatial data sets. As everyone knows, these files are incredibly heavy, they're complex, they're typically sitting on somebody's hard drive or living with the data capture vendor on their software. But it's so critical here that you need to find ways to separate that data from the software and democratize it. And so you can share it out across your organization and manage the way it's being utilized. Once you do that, you can really open yourself up to a lot of, the use cases and the value that you can get from that data, rather than seeing it be used in one or two different use cases and then kind of dying away. The next piece here that's really critical, obviously, is delivering that data, into the hands of your workforce. So not only putting it on, some kind of a geospatial storage platform like VEERUM 3D Vault, but making sure that you can give all of your teams access to use that data when they need it. So providing that channel and that consumption platform where you can publish all of that information and show, real-time insights to what's happening on your site. Then you get to the last piece, which is really that consumption and collaboration piece, where not only are you visualizing your site conditions by viewing your 3D models, your terrestrial scans, your UAV, your 360 panos, whatever that might be, but actually then tying in your operating information. We've seen over the last few years, organizations that are investing huge into establishing, democratized, standardized data systems on the cloud. Previously we've seen, maybe an organization has, 10 to 12 sites across the US or wherever it might be. And they all might be using different CMMS platforms or inspection platforms, or, we're really seeing a lot of standardization across that, and then putting all that data on the cloud so that it can be democratized, standardized. What are you going to do with that? The best thing you can do is funnel that all into a consumption-based reality first digital twin, so that, users are having that ability to shift to working visually and have all of that data, accessible within a couple of clicks.
Mm-hmm. I think that's so beneficial, Meaghan. And I love how you're talking about just how much data this technology consumes, and the process of from capture all the way down to collaboration. In recent 2 years, you mentioned, 90% of data being collected in these past 2 years. And with your first couple slides, we are in a visual space, reality capture, all of this kind of technology. It aims at equipping, our customers and users with the tools to see the, all the numbers and the metadata are there, but seeing things from an owner operator perspective, from a construction perspective, it offers a lot more insight than you might need in some other industries where the data themselves speak for whatever the results are. This is something that's been a little heavier. Do you feel that the influx of, data centers and, this huge push to the cloud in our economy as a whole, is that part of what's driving this industry towards some adoption? People tend to be critical of this industry for slow adoption, but do you feel that we're starting to turn a leaf on that, not because of mindset, but because of technology? Or do you still feel like a lot of it's mindset? How do those two play with one another?
Absolutely. I think that's a fantastic question. It's really important to talk about that. So I think it's kind of twofold. There still is some misconception or, perceptions that are presiding in the industry where, on-prem still is the way to go. And so, what has been proven is that cloud storage is, more secure, more safe, and at the same time can be delivered across the globe to different operating systems a lot more effectively than obviously when you have data stored on-prem, because then you're really locking it down to, geographical locations. I totally agree with what you're saying. We are seeing more data centers pop up everywhere. They are getting more services that are enabling, more cloud-based consumption tools that need, the additional services to meet the security and delivery requirements. So that is, the industry is catching up or keeping up to the demand, and we're just seeing that, trending upwards continuously. So I think we still have work to do, working with some owners and operators, or, across industries right now, who still might be a little bit torn to the benefits of cloud versus on-prem. There's definitely work to be done, but I've seen, especially in the last 12 to 18 months, more of a trend towards, okay, yeah, we understand the value of having our data on the cloud. We're starting to feel safer about it and thinking that they can start to shift their strategy to that. So yeah, I think that's a fantastic question. Are you seeing similar things out there?
I mean, I certainly think so. In terms of data centers and the use of the cloud, I mean, I think everyone is starting to move more and more to the cloud, like you're saying, across multiple industries. And we were talking about how important it is for ownership to buy into the reality capture, but a lot of ownership, like you're saying, data centers, they're popping up everywhere. I live in Northern Virginia, and they seem to be everywhere when we drive around, and it's crazy. But those are huge investments for these businesses to make, and they are investments that pay off because they get used a lot. So that alone, just as a testament to people moving to the cloud, the importance of data and shareability. And I think that in tandem with a lot of other hardware improvements we're seeing on computers and things make the turnaround speed for technology so much more usable. One of the big hiccups that I believe you guys are really solving to share it and then to collaborate with it. Collaboration on something that's, a month old is really useless in so many of the cases. Collaboration on something that's real time, that's useful. And the turnaround time for capturing information and then sharing it in a way where people can collaborate, it has grown tremendous. Like you said, in the last 18, 24 months, it's grown a lot, a lot. And I think that's a huge push that's driving adoption for this, and that's driving, profitability for these sorts of technologies. And that, whether people are, a little hesitant in mindset to adopt it or not, if some people are making really big money using this technology, it's going to follow. And I still think we're on the early trend of that. But those are some huge improvements that I think have allowed what you guys are doing, what a lot of this industry wants to do, to become so much more possible than it's ever been before.
Totally agree. Yeah, I appreciate that. And you make a good point about the hardware as well. And, there has been some limitations where it's almost been like a cat and dog race between, is the technology, the software, the technology, who's ahead and who are we waiting on? And, there have been some limitations on the hardware. And now I find that's catching up quite quickly to support a lot of, some of the advanced use cases like VR, XR, MR use cases, and in certain cases, we are becoming more streamable consumption platforms to make sure that hardware isn't limited to pull that data in. So yeah, I think that's a fantastic point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I might just pop us along here. So
yeah, that's perfect. Please continue.
Okay, so what are we seeing out there in the industry in terms of digital maturity and challenges on adoption? We've already hit on some really key points and really important themes here. I've kind of grouped into 3 levels of maturity that we see most often. Organizations may start out at a level 1 where there's some internal knowledge about geospatial solutions. They know it's out there. They're kind of dragging their heels, knowing that they're going to have to invest time and money into it at some point. But right now, they're not actively pursuing that into their internal strategy. Second level of maturity we're seeing is that there's a pretty solid knowledge that visual consumption strategy is going to be required at a corporate level in the near future, and they're starting to build out some of those building blocks that they're going to require to really scale that out. Whether it's asset information management systems that are standardized, as I was mentioning, on the cloud, as building engineering documentation, which can be a fallacy that you don't need that first necessarily, but we do see that a lot. And just starting to build out the strategy and testing the market on what solutions are out there. And then moving into kind of those phase 3 early adopters, more mature organizations that are actively, rolling out and scaling these digital solutions across their asset portfolio. They've got budget, they've got strategy, they have a team, they know what they're doing, and they're pushing forward with that. Reality capture is a part of their day-to-day operations. So regardless of where we see organizations on the digital maturity spectrum, there's a number of common challenges that we still seem to see that seem to cause limitations or roadblocks along the process. So one of those, and I'll dive into kind of what the solutions are to these, through some of our later slides here, James. But one of the big ones that we see is that there's often single-use data capture that's happening in isolation, whether it's one project team or some contractors that are leveraging data capture to execute some scopes of work on site. But there's disconnect between, those business units or those teams and, what maybe the corporate structure is or what's happening at a general level for operations at the full facility. So we're not seeing that, thread of information that's being shared out and leveraged. Another challenge that we see is, when you get into like the level 2 or level 3, maturity of adoption, we see some organizations that are saying, okay, we've selected our tool. Here's the groups that we want to support, routine operations. We want to, reliability, inspections, brownfield projects, whatever it is. And we're going to deploy them all at once. And this is a big challenge where, organizations are trying to eat the whole pie at once. We love the enthusiasm, but there's definitely, a more strategic, more scalable way to get that done. Another one that we see often is that, organizations have allocated budget and strategy to digital asset management, but sometimes we see more often than we'd like, enterprise teams or corporate teams, or, we see a lot of like digital twin advocacy groups have gone in at a corporate level and selected a tool and have just decided to roll it out without, really strong engagement with the end user. And I think that's such a critical piece of any success that, these tools are going to have, is you have to have that, end user engagement to make sure whatever tools you've selected are really fitting the needs and the pain points of, your operators on site. And then another one, I think we can all smile at this one, but you definitely see, with the 58% year-over-year growth in the market, we see so many new platforms out there and so many fantastic tools. It can be hard to know when to stop. So yes, chase shiny keys, chase nuggets, but make sure that you're always focused on kind of that, ultimate goal. What are we trying to achieve? What are the business needs? And not get lost in, technology fatigue. So there we go. So to start to address some of these, challenges that we're seeing out there, I want to bring it back to that high level. We're talking about what do you need to be focused on? Well, these are a few of the features or, characteristics of digital tools that we feel are so critical to success for, scalability, long-term sustainment, and impactful ROI. And we've touched on a few of these already, web-based and cloud-hosted, that shareability piece, James, that we were talking about, that is so critical. Reality first. This is always a bit of a hot topic, and I always love to get into some spicy conversations on this, but we truly believe that reality first is the path forward. That is absolutely not to say that CAD does not have a place in our industry. There's, no one who will say that it does not. Especially, for design and projects and a lot of that work, we need CAD but, to have a really impactful experience about what your existing site conditions are, you can fit 80% of the use cases based out of reality with an enriched point cloud or mesh model. And then, enrich with your CAD models and engineering drawings where you can. Which brings me to the next point. I'm going to skip down actually to the data agnostic. You have to choose tools that are data agnostic. You need to separate the data from the hardware, the data from the software. It has to all play together. So you want to have a tool that can, feed in your CAD, your engineering drawings, your plot plans, your GAs, your photos, your 360 panos, your photogrammetry, LiDAR, whatever it might be. Make sure that whatever platform you're using can ingest all of that data, because you don't want to, limit your site or your groups or your, entire operations to, using only a certain type of data capture, because, there's a time and a place for all of them. And you need to make sure that you understand what those are and then have a place to feed them all into to have that one source of truth. Interoperability, this one we're really passionate about. So having an open architecture, we're seeing more of a shift in this direction of late, which is fantastic to see. But there is, such a strong need in the industry for solution partners to work together. There's not one tool to rule them all. There's fantastic solutions out there for, we've got great inspection partners and data capture partners and AI partners. And you want to make sure that you can plug and play into all of these different systems, because at the end of the day, the goal is to drive value back to the owner and operator. And you're not going to do that alone. So this one's really important for us. And then also interoperability with, other operating systems, whether it's, SAP, CMMS systems, data lakes, other clouds, being able to pull in really from anywhere to make sure that you're as flexible as, your clients need you to be, without any limitations on how you can, serve up their data for their teams.
I think that's such a great point too, Meaghan. It's such an important element. And of course, all of these being, part of the solution that the VEERUM team has. But, you're taking, the reality capture industry as a whole. We have so many technologies that do so many important things, but so many of them being unique elements, and for them to be, like you said, interoperable, to be agnostic to one another and all come together is really so important. So many of the issues that we try to solve are a result of poor communication and fragmentation between different players in complex, industries. And it doesn't make sense if our solution to that is no better than the problem itself. If we have tools and technologies that are also fragmented and disconnected from one another, to have things that, seamlessly join and communicate so that the end result is a simple, like you said, something visual, which you guys are giving to ownership, a representation of valuable data visually and simply demonstrated from a collection of all the tools, each in their own places, to give a meaningful and profit-driven, result. And that is super important for everybody to play together for, data sets and things to work, so that we don't make something, take the fragmentation and disjointedness of the industries we're trying to make and just put that in our own industry,
Absolutely. And I'm sure that definitely hits home for you guys, because that's what you're really enabling, with RCN, is all of this collaboration and working with different solutions providers, because it's so cliche, but I just love it. Together we can go, what's the saying? Alone we can go so far, but together we can go much further. Or something, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. That's what our focus is. We are focused on bringing everyone together, helping bring this whole industry up, improve adoption. And that's why we have initiatives like our committees and things like that in our conference, to bring people together, help everybody talk and communicate, find ways that we can work and collaborate, create good standardization for processes that should be standardized to, again, kind of improve everyone, improve adoption, and avoid a lot of the pitfalls that, well, like I just shared, that could very easily, be fallen into if we weren't thinking ahead for them.
100%. And I wish we had more time today to dive into the standardization piece, because I love what you guys are doing there, working with industry. And I think that's, such a big piece of the puzzle that we really need to address, as a collective. So yeah, I'm really excited for what the outcomes are there. But yeah, the standards.
Awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So moving along. So talking about the key to maximizing data. Now, at the end of the day, I mentioned a few minutes ago, there is a plethora of data that's coming at our organizations, coming at our teams, and it can be really overwhelming. At the end of the day, the goal is to leverage that data with impactful insights to reduce the cognitive load to whoever needs to access that data. So instead of siphoning through, 6 different data layers and 4 different systems, you need to funnel that data, select what works, filter in the correct inputs, and serve it up to your clients. So in saying that, I was also talking about what are the challenges in having, single-use data capture sets, that organizations invest in, sometimes unwittingly, because, their contractors might be doing it for their own scopes of work, but that data should, reside with the owner or operator at the end of the day. Things like inspections, we see a lot of contractors out there leveraging reality capture for their inspection work. They complete the scope of work, and then that, reality capture kind of falls away. We got to find channels to, feed that back to the organization into some kind of a storage platform, as I mentioned, and into the consumption piece at the end of the day. We also see, a little one step up from there is project-specific use cases. So very often you might have, an integrated turnaround event where data capture is often done, or, some brownfield project work, some upgrades, some enhancements, some, additions or anything to the plant. We often see data capture getting done, reality capture getting done for those scopes of work as well. But the point here is we have to make sure that, you're finding ways to scale that data out, because if you're not leveraging it across your organization and just keeping it in isolation, you have what is a 1-to-1 ratio. So 1 data set for 1 use case, which equals, 1 times ROI. But really the point is to have, multiple different data captures democratized and served up to your organization. And then you can really hit that 10 times ROI because you can have multiple different business units accessing that data. Even if you don't have integrations and things like that done, there is, huge impact and huge ROI that can come just from accessing your site remotely on recent scans that another group might have captured. But that's a big gap that needs to be filled. And I think the key there is just education and just internal communication, having more knowledge about the power of this data so that your teams can kind of flag like, hey, it looks like some of our teams might be capturing data for this project scope. Is there anywhere we should be sending that so people can use it? But yeah, really the point here is, make sure, it's fantastic if you're capturing data for specific use cases, specific projects or scopes. Find a way to get that back into the hands of the users to feed into that funnel, ultimately to the consumption piece.
So Meaghan, what have you found to be the most successful way in solution? Is it really starting at that project? You're talking about single use cases first, and then at the very bottom, we're talking about really like a corporate strategy. And we can talk about this a little more if you want. I know you probably dig into it, but between a top-down approach or a bottom-up approach or a combination of the two, what kind of leadership do you find necessary from the corporate strategy, and what sort of buy-in do you find necessary from the boots on the ground in order to make your solution really valuable to your end clients?
That's a great question. And it kind of feeds into this slide. So I'm just going to hover it here while I answer that. But yeah, and earlier we were talking about, you can't have a corporate team just choosing a tool and rolling it out without buy-in from the site. What we do see a couple of scenarios often when we're, working with new clients, and typically it will start from maybe a very specific use case. So whether it's a turnaround or, schedule optimization for crane placement or, supporting inspections with one of our partners. Typically, it starts out with, one of a very specific user group. And then there's an education piece on our part where we say, absolutely, we can start, doing a pilot here. But let's look at this in terms of like a site-wide pilot. And then we can start to engage with some of the other groups. But at this point in the game, we rarely see, corporate or some of the higher up decision makers not getting involved, because most of the organizations that we're seeing out there are moving into that, tier 2, tier 3 maturity level where they're starting to have a strategy. So these, initiatives are getting flagged and saying, okay, how does this impact what we're doing? Is this something we should pay attention to? Is this something we want to scale out wider? So it's often a mix of, working with specific user groups on site and supporting, their concept, and then also working, with a larger organization and saying, here's the vision. Let's work on this, pilot or proof of value for 6 months, show you some quick value, and then we can, work with you in the meantime and show you how this is going to scale out quickly across your organization and hit on some of your, enterprise strategy goals. So this is perfect segue into, what we like to focus on with our clients, which is a progressive implementation. So, if we're not focusing on, one specific use case with a user group that wants to just, let's try this out for this and then see what happens after that. What we'd say is, we'd often come to an organization at an enterprise level who want to try out our platform, as a potential enterprise, solution that they'll be rolling out to the whole asset portfolio. So typically our approach would be like, we'd love to just go, let's get all 18 facilities and start today. Yes, we'd love to take your money, but that's not really how you're going to have success. So let's work on this a little bit more strategic. So we would say, let's start with, pick one of your facilities. And that's the first phase there would be to focus on the data capture and, building out the fundamentals, the visualization. So that's, ingesting those, reality scans, your plot plans, PNIDs, CAD models, photogrammetry, whatever it is, building out that fundamental piece and then getting that into the hands of your users, because we can stand that up within a couple of days and have, your whole organization accessing your site remotely, within a week. So it's very fast. And right away, you're going to see, trips saved to site, digital measurements, digital ads building, asset verification. You're going to see all of that happening right away, and you're going to start to have really impactful ROI. Then what we like to do is work with the organization to start tagging that equipment. So adding on that next layer of intelligence that's really bridging, the physical to the digital. And that's, tagging unique asset identifiers to each of your assets or pieces of equipment on site, which adds that whole next level of functionality where you can say, okay, I know I was looking for a pump. I think that my P&ID iteration is correct. Now I can see, yeah, it's here on site. But now you can go in and say, show me pump 101, and then it will take you there in reality, in the context of its system, in its unit, in the facility. And you can start to just, answer your questions that much faster. That really paves the way for, the holistic, integrated, 3D contextualized workflow. So that's where we start to integrate your operating data. So what we typically do or suggest is starting with one use case in one user group and deploying that, and then rinsing and repeating to different business units and going from there. And then rinse and repeat that across your facilities. So it's very strategic, and then it gets you, accustomed to how this is deployed. And it's a lot less effort than people, I think. More of the effort can come on, tagging the equipment and then waiting on, IT teams to help us deploy the integrations. But when you strategically work with groups like that and get them stood up and get the value going, then it becomes a lot easier to repeat that with. So let's say you did your routine ops planning group, then you want to do your shutdown group, and building off of the value that you've already got going. And you're going to see just super incremental ROI that's really sustainable to onboard users and scale out. So I hope that answers the question. That was a long-winded way to talk about it, but
no, I think it did, and it was a very holistic answer, which is important and very in line with the solution that you guys present. That's the focus, is holistic, including everyone who's involved in the processes and putting values, in some in each in its proper place, with that slow incremental ROI you mentioned before, not biting off more than you can chew in some way, but really that slow and steady and consistent, stable growth. That's what these businesses really want to see. I mean, everybody wants to hit home runs and get big growth, but that slow, consistent, really incremental growth across small projects, building that into something that's larger is a very scalable way to approach things.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, when we're talking about long term, each of these can matter months. So it is quite quick. You can have these done quickly, but if you start to take on too much, you might get lost in the weeds a bit. So you want to stay focused on what the end goal is, and then go to the next. So yeah.
Yep. We had a great question come in on sort of relative to the size of facilities. Maybe you can touch on this briefly. Jason asked, do you have any examples of smaller facilities like restaurants utilizing reality capture to manage facility maintenance, building equipment lifecycle?
That's a great question. That's not really a space I would say we play in. We play in pretty massive industrial facilities across, manufacturing, mining, oil and gas, chemical complexes, those kind of things. I certainly know that there are digital twins in, the commercial space. But I hate to say I would not be the best person to kind of address that from my lens. I would actually suggest, I think you guys might have some solutions partners out there who do some of those kind of things. I think Matterport is one of them that can capture some of that data. But I'm not sure about, how mature they might be in terms of, operations and maintenance.
Yeah, we can speak to that maybe a little bit more at the end. For things like restaurants, I'll say briefly, I don't know of much. That's not to say people don't use this technology and things for restaurants, but I don't know of anyone, at least I personally don't know of anyone doing that for facility maintenance on things like a restaurant. Maybe that technology will be brought in when renovations are needed and when work has to be done. But the systems, the industries that you just mentioned have a different kind of turnaround. Like a restaurant, they've got the maybe less people focused on a lot of the equipment itself than you might have in a restaurant where all of your assets surrounded by people nonstop. When there's issues with things, people generally see them. Maybe this is just ignorance on my part, but that's what I would suspect. A lot of it's interactive with the people all the time. And when things need to be changed or done, it's easily noticed. And in your sites, you have to kind of keep numbers and tags on them because your valves, you don't have somebody walking by it every day. You have to keep that track and log, and you have way more assets than you would have at something on that smaller scale that a person is less likely to actually recognize.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like we're talking about, collaboration and coordination between thousands of pieces of equipment and thousands of work activities on site every day with, hundreds of employees, sometimes up to thousands. So yeah, I think the complexity drives the solutions available. So I think it's a matter, to your point exactly, is there enough, activity on that site or in that facility to drive, a real use? And not to say that, reality data, I feel like is most often valuable in any case, but for something like this, I think that's probably why we haven't seen as many of those solutions come on the market.
Yeah, yeah. I think that there's more. I think there is some opportunity in the smaller spaces that we could dive into to certainly look at it. But maybe we can save that either for the end or for another conversation, so we can keep things rolling here on the solution that you guys pose, and then if there are more questions, we can dive into that, or we'll have a little bit of time here at the end.
Perfect. Yeah, and thanks for the question. Yeah, it's great. So yeah, I know we're getting tight on time, so I'll try to, get through a couple of these, but this is one that you and I were talking about as well. I think we both feel extremely passionate about this, and it's very critical for organizations as they're working through, whatever stage of digital maturity they're at, to identify, champions, early adopters within their teams who are starting to show interest in some of this stuff, because they will be there. And they're going to really be key, to organizing, workshops or user interviews, or, helping you test what's on the market. They might be already out there, looking at solutions or tools in the industry. It's pretty constant that you'll find individuals within your organization who really have a passion for this and might be already looking at tools. So I would say find them, foster them, work with them, give them the tools that they need, because they will always be critical in your digital transformation. Especially for, solution tools like us. We typically work with those people pretty intimately, and they drive a lot of the adoption, a lot of the architecting and those kind of things. So not only is it important to, find those early adopters within your teams, but also, make sure you're engaging at every level, as I mentioned, with your site users. Lots of engagement there. Need to find out what their pain points are and, what they're looking for to make their day better. With technology partners, get out in the industry, work with groups like RCN to see what's happening, what are the trends, what are the solutions coming out, where are the challenges, that can add a ton of value to kind of guiding you through the journey there for sure, as well as your contractors. I did talk about this a bit, but I think, there's often a lot of surprise about how many contractors, EPCs, some of your vendors out there that might be already leveraging this technology. So yeah, I would just encourage you to ask the question and see if they're using it and how, and if, there's any way for you to continue to leverage that data. All right. So at the end of the day, I'm gonna breeze through this one and just show you guys a couple of demos. But what are we actually enabling here? Well, we are enabling, holistic workflows, leveraging the same data across different business units to make decisions faster, to have, more information at the click of a button. We work, through all asset life cycles, starting from, greenfield capital projects, rolling over into operations, routine operations. Oh, sorry, I mentioned that engineering, design, shutdowns and turnarounds, inspections, reliability, and safety, of course, is kind of our underlying use case that applies to anything that you're going to be doing in these consumption tools. So, if your people are not on site, you can't hurt them. As we know, tools like VEERUM can save you 50% of trips to site. We just had a client report that in less than a year, I think they saved 75,000 exposure hours using this platform. So it's really impactful when you think about it, not only on cost savings, but really, keeping your people out of harm's way and giving them the tools like this to do their jobs more efficiently. So with that, I am going to show you, I'm just going to exit out of here, a couple of examples. Just mute that. So here's what this actually looks like in practice. I'm just going to talk to it. This is an example. I'm sure many of you guys are familiar with this glycol plant. It's a widely used demo site. Here's what it looks like, building out your fundamental visualization pieces. You can see we had the plot plan overlaid with the reality scan. It was just done with a Navis. I think the site was captured in about 25 minutes. Then we showed your 360-degree panos, so those different layers of visualization, and then adding in those asset tags where you can start to see some of the integrations getting pulled out. So you can see, there's a vessel or a tank that we're looking at. Here's a piece of equipment that has a closed work order. You can color code things for those, crisp visualization cues. Pulling in all that information from your work orders, pulling it into that system of record. We're not a document storage system, so we'll always be referencing back your system of record, making sure that you can trust, whatever information is getting pulled up. So, and these deployments are often, quite quick. There's, I think, a misconception that this can take a few years and millions of dollars, and that's not the case. You can have these tools ready for your teams within a few months here. So, and I'll just show, I might jump to the next one. So here's an example of some work that we do with shutdowns and turnarounds, huge on the logistics planning. You can see you can, incorporate your traffic plan. You can place your equipment, whether it's cranes, dozers, scaffolding units, you can see there, make sure, verify constructability. So we see, 80% of the return when we're working with shutdowns and turnarounds does come from the strategic planning. No matter how critically you look at your schedule, even 18 to 36 months ahead of your event, there's still going to be a level of, uncertainty there because you can't, consistently get on site, take measurements. You can't visualize if hot work's happening above other people working at the same time. So visualizing that 40, planning, making sure that you've got all of your work lined up, your equipment is optimized, and then pulling in those work list activities. So not only is this great for, your actual teams on site, but also for stakeholders who, want to have that early visualization or early detection if things are falling behind schedule. You can color code things as they get checked off, see a day by day look ahead, things like that. So really, really powerful tool. And then this one, you guys may have seen this video before. But this is a great example of some work that we did with some of our key partners out there in the industry. So we worked with Hover and Detect on this one. And Acuren did the drone scan here if it's flying. So yeah, so what they did was, they flew a drone up this 2-stack heater to do an inspection. The output was, I think, 4,000 photos and a couple of hours of video footage. Typically, that would be reviewed by a person, but, Detect ran that through their AI algorithm and submitted it into Hover. And we were able to ingest any of the insights from that. So really, simplifying that process and creating massive efficiencies. So all that you're looking at here are the insights that are coming from that data. So where to focus on and what to look for. And then, you can just go ahead and create work orders and start to, mobilize your teams from there. So really leveraging technology, to keep people out of harm's way and to deliver insights a lot faster using reality data. So pretty powerful. Go back to slideshow. So I think, that wraps it up. I hope we have some time for some convo after that. But I just want to drive home, what the messaging is here. And as you're looking for tools, think about long-term usability, think about scalability, think about reality first. How can you engage and find tools that support your end users and support corporate goals? Because there is a path forward there. Community knowledge and sharing is absolutely key. Getting engaged with groups like RCN. You have to work together to build broader strategies, understand what technology is out there, create things like standards. So we're driving forward together, identify gaps and work together to fill them. The appetite out there is huge for, reality tools, consumption tools, and the like. So we need to work together to make sure that we're staying on top of the pulse there. again, it's not just about capturing reality data to solve one problem. It's about using it to solve many. And that's where you're going to find those impactful returns. So making sure you have the channels and tools in place to share that data, democratize it, standardize it, and get it into the hands of your users. Agnostic.
Awesome.
Oh, yeah, sorry, I think that captures it.
No,
So
no.
it's on the end users.
Yeah, I think that's perfect, Meaghan. I think that's perfect. Really appreciate you sharing all this. Let me ask, I guess, a couple questions, and we did just get one question come through. If anyone else has questions, we still have some time here, so we'll dive into things a little deeper. But the solution that the VEERUM team presents here, what would you say in a nutshell are probably the three most valuable pieces of it for someone in the end result, focus on those for your end users, the owner operators. And then what are some of the real values for people who are, call it, in the middle of, or create the result for the end operator? A lot of the scan providers, what's some of the value that a lot of the scan providers who perform the scans for the end operator, what's the main value or a couple of main values for them in using your solution relative to the owner?
Yeah, absolutely. So at the end of the day, certainly the biggest value driver from these solutions is the ROI. There's tangible returns, cost savings that they're seeing, month one from using these tools. And so it's very hard to argue with that. It's, some of the hurdles can be in the deployment, in the tool selection and scaling them out, as we talked about. But, there's enough recognition of the value that's coming from these kind of tools and where it's going in the future. Like we don't have time to get into that today for sure. But, that value, those, bottom line drivers are significant enough for, owners and operators to be actively pursuing these kind of solutions for sure. And when we look to, the data capture providers, they have been some of the best partners to us. We work very closely with them. And, at the end of the day, the more that, us as a holistic industry can elevate the value and highlight the value that reality capture can deliver across the industry, the more scanning is going to be, required or procured out there. And so I think there's been massive collaboration with us and the data capture companies on the types of data and different ways to process data and new, file types that are coming up all the time. Like we see point clouds and meshes and cesium tiles and Gaussian splatting. And so really we've been working closely with our partners on that to say what's the best way to capture and promote this data and how can we add value to the end users. So it's certainly a win-win there. And I think will be consistently important to keep close with the data capture companies because they're really the experts in that space.
So question on that, and that actually ties perfectly with the question that we got here in the feed. The question was, how many users can access VEERUM's platform and how can we securely share with contractors or external teams? So for these data, capture teams working with the end owners, who can access VEERUM? And can you, I guess, just answer that question directly?
So 2 mantras from VEERUM. So obviously our goal is to democratize this data and get it in the hands of as many users. And so that is our commercial model. We are unlimited users. We want, organizations who procure this or buy this or roll this out to be able to share it as widely as they can. And that includes their contractors as well. So it can be data capture companies, EPCs, any teams that are working on site. It's, this data at the end of the day will always be owned by the owner. We supply the platform, we do some of the architecting and we serve it up, but it will always be their data. So really it's completely at their discretion with who they want to have access to it. We understand that there are some, stringent requirements around security with some of the data sets, especially on, major projects and things like that. So we can restrict certain work scopes or sites on behalf of the client to make sure that if they have contractors or, other vendors getting in there to add or manipulate or work on data, collaborate, do some scoping or design work, they're accessing only what they should be. So yeah, there's guardrail tools in place there, but really set up to put this as far and wide as the owners and operators think they can.
Awesome. That's great. I think that the unlimited user piece really, again, with the whole mission that you're focused on, collaboration, bringing everyone together to communicate on these pieces is really, really big. That's really big. I'll just make one side piece back to the conversation we had a little earlier on the small projects, and this is a resource for everyone here. Of course, everyone knows we're here in this RCN webinar. We have our committees and things, but we have really a great place to focus on all that with the small project ways this can be used on scale or ways this can be used on smaller pieces. One of our leaders mentioned just in the chat of ways that can be leveraged. So I would encourage everyone here, just to participate in some of the committees that we have. I know Jason, I believe, asked the question how it can be used on smaller projects. Some of our leadership, said that they have solutions. That is a fantastic place for everyone to collaborate and to address small, big, talk about great technologies here like VEERUM, where everyone can come together. Again, it kind of helps with raising that. So I want to make that just a small piece so our small project implementation didn't get forgotten. But even just in this conversation, there's already pieces happening in the background where people are talking about that. So I'd encourage everyone to participate in that and to share that a little bit more. We got another question here for you, Meaghan. Does VEERUM collaborate with scam providers to pitch to organizations? That's a good question.
Yeah, we love that for sure. We often find organizations that we've been engaging with that maybe have not in the past leveraged data capture in the past. So we will find partners on their behalf at their request to go in and propose, scopes of work to. We also love it when our data capture, partners in the industry will bring us to some of their end users because they've seen a gap on that side where they don't have a consumption piece. So absolutely, we always love to coordinate to collaborate. I think, partnership is key here for sure. So if there's any interest there, we would absolutely love to talk to you.
Awesome. Oh, well, this has been great, Meaghan. I think we're coming up to the hour. We do have just a few more minutes for some questions. I guess one piece with the VEERUM solution as a whole, does your solution have distinct separations in it? You mentioned you have your vault where data can be uploaded and stored in a lot of ways, and then unlimited users, so everybody can kind of upload things. Does the organization itself have a means of, like with an admin team, where they can separate and turn it into the useful information?
Yeah, so we do have kind of two separate product lines that typically get served up together, which is the 3D Vault digital asset management storage piece, and then the consumption platform, which is the digital twin. And then so on the 3D Vault side, that is completely self-owned by the client. It's very intuitive. You set up all your own admin capabilities, and we are working towards that in the near term here with the digital twin as well. But we do have a team of geospatial experts or solutions leads that are absolutely incredible. And they all come from a geospatial background. So they work closely with our clients for any support that they need along the way, whether it's questions about georeferencing data or coordinate systems, deploying things for specific use cases. We have great architects as well that we definitely leverage to work with the clients alongside the deployment phase. So we do have what we call white glove service. So we want to make sure that you're never alone. You guys, all of our clients have a team of people that are there to support, answer questions, and see them along the deployment phase. And even into, the maintenance and rollout, because, what we've seen is these things are always maturing. There's always new use cases, new sites, those kind of things. So it's definitely an evolution, but after the first couple months of the deployment, it becomes pretty seamless and everybody knows what they're doing. And it might be, requests here and there to say, hey, can you add in this data? Or we want to get a new site going. So I hope that answers the question, but.
I think so. We just got another question that came in too. Can you share an example of a company that's benefited from adopting the data-driven approach or some ROI that you've seen?
Yeah, for sure. So those ROI numbers that I had up earlier, those are directly reported from our client base. So we take the averages of those. We do ROI evaluations with them. one of the companies that I don't know if I can say names out loud, actually should have asked that earlier, but we work with a lot of, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 organizations around the world. If you reach out to me, I'd be happy to share, specific examples of those after. I got to check with our marketing team if I'm allowed to share that out. But yeah, we
Sure.
did. Yeah, those numbers, so 33%, ROI or productivity improvements, 50% on site savings, 40% cost savings. So those numbers we have a lot more statistics that we can break down and share with you, such as, exposure hours, planning, scoping, those kind of things. So creating efficiencies in that, and adherence to schedule for projects and shutdowns, turnarounds. So we have a lot of that we can save or share with you, as well as some specific use cases and white papers. So I'd definitely be happy to share those out.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Another question here. Cloud was mentioned. Do you have a FedRAMP cloud? Right now, one of the clients, Kenneth, is restricted to on-prem.
Okay, yeah, thanks for the question, Kenneth. I would have to take that back to our technical team. We can support on-prem. It is pretty costly, as we are, a cloud-based organization. So we have always been hosted on AWS cloud. I'm not sure what FedRAMP is, but it's something I can certainly take back to our technical team and get an answer back to you. Yeah, I apologize. I don't know about that one off the top of my head. But yeah, I understand the challenges, and I feel for you, because I know that can be quite restricting sometimes. But we may be able to support you with some information there for sure.
Yeah, and with that, Meaghan, could you share? Do we have another page where some of your contact information is available for anyone who wants to get in touch with you and the team?
Sorry, I didn't go to the last page. Yeah, there's
That's all right.
my contact there for sure, and I've got our VEERUM's and RCN's LinkedIn QR codes there as well. So yeah, please do reach out to me if you have any questions or anything. I'd love to engage and chat with you. So.
Well, great. I think that answers all of our questions, unless there are any last minute ones that come in now. Meaghan, this has really been it's really been a pleasure having you here with us, and showing everyone here in our audience what you guys are doing. And again, such a great solution, but a very cohesive and unifying solution, which I can't stress enough how much I love that, how important that is, and taking the emphasis really on how ownership, where so many of the decisions come from. There's value in reality capture all the way through. People can find values for it, but when you get the really big owners to be on board with it, and then the hope of everyone here is that they even start requiring this kind of technology downstream. That's everyone's hope, I'm sure, to be like, wow, this stuff is great. Whenever we need to work on things, whenever we want to manage stuff, this is the way to do it. So I think that getting with those groups and showing the ROI numbers that you showed, that's along with the technology and hardware, how everything's advancing. I think we're going to really see big transformation in how your solution, how this technology is implemented across the board.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And we're pretty bullish too. I think that's the way this is going as well, where this will be, a required implementation across the board in the industry in the not so near future. So I appreciate that. And thank you so much for having me today. VEERUM loves working with RCN. You guys have been incredible partners to us. And we really appreciate the collaboration here and letting us, join in for a conversation today.
Yep. Absolute pleasure to have you. So thank you everyone for joining us today. We hope to, stay in touch with all of you and ask that you be connected with us in our community. Obviously, Meaghan has her, those QR codes, follow VEERUM on their page, Reality Capture Network. I shared, we have our committees going. So if you want to participate in more conversations like this, especially with other vendors and scam providers and owners, all of them are present in a lot of our committees. So I encourage you to participate in that, find some of the best people in this industry who are pushing it forward and, gaining a lot of great business from it. So hope everyone here can participate. Thank you, everybody, for jumping in and joining us today.
Thank you so much. Thanks, James.
All right. Thank you, Meaghan. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful day.